Righty ho. Hello. That rhymed. It's what is it? Episode 10. Episode 10 already.
Indeed,
That's a
uh,
milestone.
indeed.
Yeah. And oh yeah, last week for our still minimal audience, but we're grateful for all the tune-ins, of course. The audio was a little bit fucked, and I think it's going to happen from time to time, just because a the start of it I had speaker on, which definitely ruined it, but also Skype being a kind of 1997 a 1997 baby means that it's a little bit scatty, and then throwing into the equation us being very far apart. So I'm abroad in Central America at the moment. The Wi-Fi is obviously not always accurate and or always precise, I should say. And yeah, sometimes it can be a nightmare. So let's hope it's better this week. And again, if anyone's got any recommendations for like a good bit of software that can be utilized through phones, that would be great. Is that good, James? Is that a good intro to episode 10?
Sound sounds perfect to me.
Cool, cool. So, topic of conversation. Um, shall we continue on? Obviously, we can like throw in splashes and kind of sprinkles of everything, which is naturally going to occur anyway as we go on our tangents and rants. But should we should we try and add to the kind of like solutions and the kind of the solutions to what is inevitably coming, as depressing as that sounds? I think we're all aware, as we're all tuning into these kinds of subject matters, that yeah, there's only one way this agenda is going, and I don't think it can be reversed.
Yeah, they're
So,
not
how
letting
to
up
deal with
though.
that?
They're not
No,
letting up.
they're not.
Um, yes. I mean, as you said, there's various ways or that they can use to, destabilize us before before the complete reset. And something that you've alluded to is obviously the kind of taking down of the web or the
Oh,
web.
completely, yeah.
And like this is, like you said, when we've had our private conversations, it's integral to everything essentially, even things that may appear manual, like turning on a tap at home, at its source, at say, Anglia Water or Thames Water. It'll be like computerized. There'll be like a system that controls these things, and it'll probably be operated by a server, which obviously is linked to a network, and networks run on networks like a worldwide web of sorts, or at least a web or some kind of server that connects different devices in remote places. Um, so yeah, a possible solution to that, as I was actually thinking that, is that the good thing about innovation, intelligence, and computer, because everything has, whether it's inorganic or not, is made from organic components that are then maybe changed and morphed into compounds, etc. So there are people with the knowledge of how to make plastic. There are people that know how to make circuit boards. People know how to build PCs. I mean, I even built a PC, back in like 2004 stroke 2005, and I bought all the components. And there's people that know how to make the components that go into making that. So, it's not unfeasible. Like, we know how to make batteries, we know how to make electricity out of nothing. These things are possible, but essentially would kind of, I think a solution to that would be to be self sufficient, and we'd have to maybe use like rudimentary forms of the technology that's widespread now, um initially, on a local level, and then over time, you would hope that that would grow to allow people to exchange information and communicate, across wider distances over time. Um, I don't know what you would
What
say in regards to that.
Well, I was thinking of like what goes down in the kind of classic dystopian London, Paris, Berlin, big inner cities are always depicted in zombie movies because essentially that's what it's going to come down to. I mean, zombieism, if that's a term, may be metaphorical, or it may well be a realistic kind of outlay of what's to come. As a consequence of all the jabs and poisons that been planted
Exactly.
into foods and stuff. So who knows? But certainly zombies are actually quite interesting in the fact that it has been pushed for such a long time. So many movies, Dawn of the Dead, Shaun of the Dead, Z Day or whatever it's called, and all the other ones.
What was
It's
that?
certainly something that, yeah, exactly. It's certainly something that they want to be at the forefront of the current kind of narrative, and I think that says it all. In fact, in World War Z, the Brad Pitt movie, it's Jerusalem is depicted as overrun by zombies, which is quite interesting given the current political climate in that area of the world. But I think what I was thinking was just no matter how self-sustainable you are and you want to be, and even if you've succeeded at being self-sustainable and you have a piece of land in a small nation state or an area of the world which is densely populated, what's going to happen is very problematic. I guess it works when you're out in the outback in a kind of a large landmass like the United States, where you've got kind of just thousands of kilometers of prairie land that are just untouched by civilization. You can get yourself a little property and escape kind of off grid. But even if you have that property, in the UK and it is considered rural, it's still going to be only 70, 80 Ks at most from, a sizable town. And when the communication networks go out in a big city or even a small town, all the food will be ransacked within a couple of hours from every major store. So then you've got vigilante gangs. Actually, I'll revoke that statement. Vigilante is more of a positive kind of response to criminal activity. You're going to have criminal gangs roaming around who are naturally going to have access to the weapons and the gun, all these kinds of things, these negatives, because negative people will go for the negatives quicker than positive people will, generally speaking. And even if a few kind of vigilantes get their hands on weapons to defend themselves, they're always going to be outnumbered by the gangs. It's going to be very kind of Mad Maxian, if that's a term. And yeah, I mean, like you said, the water's going to be cut off, and they're probably poison the water anyway, so it's a no-no. The bottled water is going to be sparse and sporadic, and will go pretty quickly. People are going to be pillaging and raping and murdering, and then of course the next step of that, not being able to communicate with families and friends, is going to make things worse. You're going to have people, moving all over the place, and that's going to kind of add to the kind of dystopian kind of shutdown of society, if you like. The madness of it all, and people are going to disperse out into the countryside, and that's where it hits you in small nation states which are densely populated, pretty much all of Europe. You can't really escape when you've got hordes, literally hordes, hundreds of thousands of people, escaping the cities, which are going to be burning and just going to be harrowing by this point. Trying to fend for themselves out in the countryside. People that have had no experience living off the land or even doing basic practical things because they've been city dwellers. They're going to start raiding the houses. That's the only thing. And when you're in a small place like England or Scotland or Wales or France or wherever, all these rural places will just be pillaged, and that's the issue, really. Like, you can't defend yourself against even a small horde, no matter how heroic and strong one might be, unless your defense system is like military grade, which of course it's not going to be for 99.9% of people. So yeah, I was thinking of like what to do in these situations. What's like the breakdown of, okay, like hour by hour, second by second, maybe not that extreme, but like day by day, like what happens when it shuts down? You realize, you wake up and like you've got no phone, you've got no internet, you've got no landline, you've got no capacity to even network yourself around the city that you've been living in for 10, 15, 20 years or your life, because most people rely on Google Maps now.
Absolutely.
It's like the madness of it, like to think, and then to go outside and you realize, okay, so the first thing I need is food and water, right? You turn on the taps, there's no water. You probably don't even have any water in your house, maybe like half a liter of some beverage that's just been left in the fridge. It's okay, you've got to go to the shops, and you look outside and everything's burning, everything's on fire. You can see the corner shop that's already pillaged. There's probably nothing left. And then there's that security risk of, once you leave your house, you're literally out in dun 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 Zombieland.
Yeah.
That sounds very depressing, doesn't it? But I think that's quite realistic.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the reality of what we very well could be facing. And even quicker, because I find that what these elites tend to do is that sometimes they stagger their plans. Like they're ready to go full steam ahead, and then things might become a little bit obvious, and because they don't necessarily want to lose the normies that follow them, they'll kind of like hold back, and they'll put it back for that maybe like a year or two, or they'll drip feed it, or they'll just kind of like maybe just change their angle of attack. So it very well could be like the whole internet goes down zombie thing, or it could be like some kind of outer threat like we've spoken about before. Like they could use aliens, and or some kind of war, or some kind of fallout from some kind of like missile attack from some alleged enemy state, even though at the top they're all friends, but at least like the narrative is that they're enemies, and this is why, like, the importance of like having been able to, defend yourself, knowing how to use weaponry. I mean, it's still like the minority of people that, really, know how to defend themselves to a proficient level. I'm talking about, being able to maybe disarm somebody with a weapon or something like that. Like, a lot of people maybe know how to throw a punch or can kick or, whatever, but it's going to take a different level of self-defense skills when the shit hits the fan. So I think it's quite important that people kind of prepare themselves, physically as well, because you may need to be able to jog for miles or run for miles because of things that aren't there, i.e., there might be no petrol. You might need to prepare to walk miles because you might be chased out of your house by like a gang of marauders or zombies or whatever. There's a lot. Maybe fasting, like fasting would probably like if you just taught yourself to be able to fast for a couple of days, now and again, things like that would help you because food will be sparse. Preparing yourself physically and mentally for the hardships to come is definitely advisable. And also, because as you were talking about, you got like these groups of criminally minded people that will gravitate together and form their alliances. I think it's just as important that people with a more positive inclination also band together, because there are more people with less of a criminal inclination. Like, it's not the majority of humanity that are criminals. It's still the minority, even in like, a country like, the UK that, or the country like England, the UK, that's historically had the kind of a culture of criminality. For the most part, most people still are not criminals. So people like us need to get together, and form, as you said, vigilante groups, because vigilante tends to have more of like a positive inclination. And there's going to be a lot of moving parts, but self-defense, self-sufficiency, I think will absolutely be key in that.
Essentially, like efficiency, like when you talked about the fasting and the foods, I think it's very important because given that scarcity, which is inevitable, being able to analyze each food product and to know what you put in your body and what that food actually does for you, I think is very, very important. And it's something that people just don't, clearly, judging by the size of many people in the world, in both respects, actually, people don't seem to have any kind of understanding of how they eat and what they should be eating. And once you understand that you only need to put like a certain amount of food in your tummy to be sufficient for the day or the next coming days. I think that's a very useful approach to existing in a world where scarcity will be around every single corner. I mean, looking at people in the US that will go and fill up a Fanta, which is extra large, and that's 1,000 calories, and then they have just their breakfast butty at McDonald's, and that's probably like combine what that body needs maximum for a day, and yet they're going to repeat that 4 or 5 times throughout the day, because obviously the food's not made to be filling, but it is made to be of a detriment to your body. And I think efficiency, like I said, is key to everything, the physical aspects as well, like healthy body, healthy mind, healthy body. It's all one and the same, it's all one ecosystem. And once you start to see the positive effects of that efficient outlook on life, then you're going to start building on that efficiency. And without sounding like crazy, I shouldn't call them crazy, I'm going to revoke that word, it's actually quite the contrary for the most part, but you have these people called survivalists, and I don't think they're crazy too. I find them very interesting. I watch a lot of their channels, and actually when you're out in the outback and you have the capacity to store and hold foods and be more efficient, it's a very great thing. It's just, I think sometimes a lot of these survivalists have been pondering the end for the last 50, 60 years. And I think if people take like a negative outlook in life, then they're not really experiencing their life. So there's that kind of line between going over the top and being, not able to actually enjoy the day-to-day aspects of existence. But also at the same time, you want, enough of a realistic outlook to prepare for what may come. So it's just about balance again, balance, efficiency. I guess they're one and the same, really. And I think it's it's really the kind of the way forward, just to kind of. But I guess the social network is key to that. I hate to use that word; it reminds me of Mark Zuckerberg's the book and the film. The social, but I mean, that's why it was so successful, because at core, humanity aspires, is driven biologically to be social. That's the ultimate form of survival, to work together, which is of course why the state and their implemented shills and those above them controlling them, like the puppetry they are always intent on expiring social interaction as much as possible, whether it's increasing tax on alcohol in pubs to prevent people interacting in what is always ordinarily been a social space, while simultaneously lowering them in supermarkets, so people are kind of like separate from one another and less inclined to go out. Same with the whole COVID nonsense and all this BS. It's all a mechanism by which to prevent humans from just being human, actually. So yeah, I mean, I guess that is one of the main key. But it is interesting, I guess, to look at it from more of a global perspective now, in a globalized world, and think, why is it that people opt to stay in certain places? Because this is kind of where I wanted to take part of the conversation. Like, and everywhere is accessible pretty much in the world now, and especially when you're lucky enough to have a currency like the US dollar, the euro, the GBP, or perhaps a Scandi currency, something that has, still to this day a global value. People still opt to sit in certain places when it's not always beneficial for them to do so. Sometimes it is, sometimes they enjoy it, and that's good. But there are so many situations, especially in the UK, where people literally, for example, they own a property. Like I've been watching these Wendell flash ups that come up. That's not a YouTube shout out, but the channel's called Wendell, and I'm not promoting his channel, because although I do watch some of them, I do think they do have negative connotations. But these channels that are springing up where people look at all these ghost towns. I think I've been sharing some with you, James. They go to like some Blackpool, or places that used to be ordinarily quite successful economically, and now they've expired themselves, and they are just these kind of shithole ghost towns like Stoke. No offense to anyone from Stoke. But even in these situations, people can still sell their houses, even though they might be worth a pittance comparably to other places in the UK. 30, 40, 50 grand, you can go and fuck off to probably France, rural France, and buy yourself a nice place there. But looking more, into the continents beyond, you can set up a completely new life where you've got less restrictions, no tax things, nothing, ordinarily that you find in the West that really prohibit one from expanding and really, put the restraints on freedom. And I always think to myself, you've got all these people, all these elderly people, especially, that own these properties, some of which are probably worth like fucking millions or whatever. Just fucking get out there and just leave a situation where, or an environment where, in a situation like we've highlighted, where there is, a capacity for just a giant cataclysm of social sorts, just harrowing scenarios that will inevitably unfold. Why not just go out somewhere, into Asia or, even South America, though I'm not a fan of, this particular continent, but anywhere where there's space to breathe and less insight for restrictions. What do you reckon to that? I think we've discussed this before, haven't we? Like the capacity to just, move on.
I mean, I think a lot of people would, and people don't like change. So, like, even if, like, a few foreigners move in next door, people think, oh, fuck this, I'm out of here. So, so getting people to, who move to, let's just say, Kyrgyzstan, somewhere where they'd have to maybe, literally get used to a completely different type of culture where they can't, have like an egg and bacon sandwich, every morning, or they can't watch EastEnders, or, it's like human beings for the most part are creatures of habit. And then on top of that, like you said, social creatures. So there's like a whole network that maybe a 70 or 80-year-old would have built up in like their hometown, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, daughters, sons. And I get it from an emotional perspective. I can see why it can be a drain on them. However, people without those attachments, you're absolutely right, it should be a no-brainer. Other
Completely.
than just like, I think it's homeostasis. It's just like when people just like tend to just be fixed and just, it's like just in a state of like, just in a static state basically. But yeah, absolutely. And then there are lots of people who would like to do that, but because they don't have the financial means to, repatriate, or
No, but
to,
this is the mistake. This is one of the core things that I've heard over the course of my life, pretty much, at least my traveling life. People always assume that it's really expensive to travel. It's actually cheaper to travel than it is to live in a place like the UK or Western Europe, period, like 100%, no tax obligations, none of these MOTs, none of this, council tax, the fuel costs, the food costs, the utilities costs, none of that. You can literally live in hotels and, hostels, backpackers, camping places if you're going on like little trips. And if you all merge it into a sequence of like efficient outlook, for lack of a better term, it becomes so much more feasible than living, and so much more interesting. And of course, the entire time you're building new social networks, because that's the kind of the not the oxymoron. What's the word I'm looking for? Where one thing defeats the other. It's like social network is positive, but it's that social network which prevents you from expanding that very network and from opening up other networks. Like you said, people become very attached naturally and emotionally, because we are emotional beings, to family and friends, etc. And that's what anchors them in certain places. In fact, more so than anything else, I would argue. The amount of people that travel halfway across the world because they met a woman on the internet says it all. It's just like, it's that classic scenario of like, we are driven by the biology, the emotion. And but in a way, I find that is kind of the classic case of survival of the fittest, and that's really what underpins success, for lack of a better term, or survival over non-survival, or over dying out as a kind of breed, or as a kind of your as a gene pool. Because sometimes people need to think to themselves, okay, well, realistically, it is my life, and they need to make decisions based on how they feel. And of course, that almost sounds oxymoronic in the sense that, well, if they feel that they should stay with their family and friends, that's that is the best thing for them. But that's the same scenario as like a heroin addict saying, well, I think heroin's the best for me because it makes me feel good because that's what I want. But, you know, realistically, I'd like to eat chocolate all fucking day, every day. But I realise that it's not always the best thing. And that, I think that's a problem that a lot of people are unable to kind of define within themselves. Like what it is what is the most important thing for them. You know, okay, it's nice to have friends and family and to live around them, you know, and it's nice to eat chocolate all day. And a heroin addict might say, well, you know, it's nice. Well, to be honest, it's probably nice to do heroin. I've heard it's amazing. But realistically, you know, you should draw the line and be like, no, heroin is bad. No, too much chocolate is bad. And sometimes, you know, being anchored into a place just because, you know, you've set up these social connections is not necessarily the best because, you know, you're missing out on other social connections elsewhere. And yeah, this is the thing, you know. But I guess it's self-defeating because in order to grasp that, in order to gain that outlook on life, you have to have had that outlook. It's the outlook that breeds the outlook. So, you know, people are scared of change because they haven't changed. So, you know, I guess it comes back into
Exactly.
the philosophy of what is it that makes people, you know, take that extra step that ordinarily most people don't. What is it? What is it that gives that drive?
Yeah, it's I mean, I suppose there are lots of nuances to that. We've, you know, touched on some. A lot of the time, it's like an individual thing. It's I suppose it just depends on maybe the types of relationships that, you know, that people foster. Um, it's like, for instance, if I was talking about myself, for example, I would definitely go and live somewhere else, and I wouldn't be too fussed. I mean, the fact that, you know, I don't have any, for example, I've got siblings. I don't have any living parents to, yeah, to necessarily anchor me somewhere. I just got like lots of, you know, I've got like some personal things that essentially would need to be wrapped up. But yeah, other than that, it's like, yeah, my friends, it's like, you know, the world is so small now. I can see anybody on WhatsApp. You can be in any corner of the world and I can see your face for free on my phone. So yeah, there's not really going to be any missing anybody, unless, yeah, you know. And then once again, I find new things quite exciting. You know, change is, you know, exciting. Meeting new people can be exciting. Learning a new, you know, whether language or seeing a new culture, all of these things, you know, yeah, are quite interesting and exciting things. But then there are some people who literally, like you said, there's just like there's a fear of change, that some people have as well. So there are some people that literally will have no anchors, nothing pin them to somewhere, but they just don't have the capacity to, yeah, to change or to do other things. So there's lots of nuances, lots of external factors. There's psychological reasons. There can sometimes be financial reasons. I know that you said that it's cheaper to, you know, to live somewhere, but let's just say, for example, you know, there might be some people who are in debt here, for example. So in order for them to even, you know, get I mean, believe it or not, there are actually poor people living in, you know, in the UK. Um, but yeah, for the most part, anybody that's kind of, you know, got, you know, a few grand saved up, um, moving away is definitely feasible. Traveling is feasible. There are ways to make residual income, you know, while on the move that are feasible, as you know, as you've proven with some of the things that you've done and shown me. So, yeah, I would definitely agree that getting out of Dodge, getting out of the cities, getting out of the densely populated areas that are going to turn into Zombieland when the shit hits the fan is,
Oh, completely, yeah. It should be the
definitely.
utmost priority, absolutely. And that's actually one of the reasons why I didn't want to come back to the UK because at that time, I've been outside the UK listeners for quite a few years now, traveling, seeing the world, and all that kind of stuff. But I really did think at that point that the world was, and it's for sure coming in the next, you know, what would you say, decade maximum, because
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
based on the
definitely.
numerology, yeah,
Yeah,
based on the numerology we've discussed before, it's a 2026, 2030, 2033 scenario, and it might be all those years and all years in between. It's just certain events will be more prominent, most likely on those key dates. And it sounds
yeah,
very kind of like, oh my God, kind of artsy fartsy, not artsy fartsy, but maybe artsy fartsy, very kind of, uh, atypical predictions that sound very conspiratorial. But, realistically, that is how the world operates. Everything is numerological, as I've been sharing with James now for so many years. I mean, we throw pictures back and forth like every day from just news headlines, current events, even YouTube Shorts. Yesterday, prime example, YouTube Shorts are completely rigged. So if you actually look at the YouTube Shorts and you look at what's recommended to you, you look at the likes and comments. More than often, there are likes that have 666 or 33, and the channel name. There's a
yeah,
disproportionate number of channels with stupid names like Miley185666. And then, so yesterday I have four in a row. It was literally like 666,000 likes, 33,000 likes. And then there was 3,000 likes. And then after that, if you don't see the likes, but you open the video, there's some reference within the video. So it'll be like 36% or what was the one today with Eddie Hall? 36 meters, stuff like this.
yeah.
Which is why there's a very likely probability that it's what's going to kick off is going to kick off again based on the number of years since the what was it, the death of the occultists obviously believe that all these aspects highlighted in the Talmud and the Torah and their historical and religious texts are, well, they're created for a reason, but they pursue them and they follow the timelines, because the
Absolutely,
timelines themselves are concocted by themselves anyway to produce these outcomes and
absolutely,
ages. So I think
absolutely.
it's coming up to the anniversary of Jesus's death, isn't it, or something like that, to the date. It's like some big era, something along the lines of
It'll be
that.
like a
Again, I don't know if
second, because I think it
second
was
coming.
yeah, 2033. They said that Jesus died at 33. He was,
Yeah.
crucified at 33. But so he was after death, Anno Domini.
It's something to do with like exactly a couple of thousand years or something like that. But I don't know if
Yeah,
that's based on the Jewish timeline or the kind of standard timelines that are used by most people. Either way, this isn't a podcast about Christianity or Islam or religion as a whole as such. I guess there's always time for that. But yeah, the point is that um, people can just leave the country tomorrow if they want to. And it's so easy to do, irrespective of the amount you have in your bank account or debt. You can literally, for example, you can enroll in a university course, and some people might be thinking, "But I don't have any qualifications. I don't need to." Blah blah blah. I don't know if I'll be able to get in. Rather, I don't have any of these accolades that is ordinarily understood to be expected by universities. University is a scam. If no one realizes that in the UK already, university is a scam. It doesn't, relate in any way to one's intellect. You can enroll in an online course tomorrow. You'll get paid, like if you're over 25, like 11, 12 grand a year, and then you can just go and leave the country and you could do the course on the go, even though you're not supposed to technically. It's very, very feasible to do something like that should you wish. And things like, you just go and take out a load of credit cards, if you're able. I know some people may not be able to, or they may have debt, but there are credit card companies that are willing to give you that cash. Just go out, take those credit cards, and then just leave the country. Literally just max them all out in cash, leave the country. Just look at all the items that you have in your space and think to yourself, do I need any of this? You probably don't need 99.9% of it. Put it on Whatnot or Etsy or eBay or, or all these other websites that you come across, and just get rid of all of it. And tomorrow, anyone could leave the country. I promise. Anybody could leave the country with a couple of K. And that's the baseline. Frankly, if you've got an okay credit rating and you don't have much debt, you could take out every single credit card on the same day. You could walk into a bank and take out a student overdraft. What is that noise, James? It sounds like you're beatboxing in the background.
it
Were you?
was. I was actually just fanning myself because yeah,
Oh,
a little bit of a hot flush. Sorry about that,
oh, mate.
listeners.
Yeah, well, maybe
Yeah,
I should be a political orator than a speech if my words have that much power. Uh,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
You're
like
talking
people have
fire.
the yeah, exactly. But people have the capacity to make that fire. Literally, people can, like I said, if they don't have like a massive amount of debt, even if they do, they can take out a couple of K and leave the country. But you know, if they don't, they could take out a student overdraft from every single UK bank. They're not allowed to share information, walk into every branch on the same day, take out a student overdraft, take out your student loan from the British government, and just fuck off. It's all, don't feel bad about it. It's a total scam. Money's not real. Remember, it's all print. It's all just fake. It's just digits on a computer. There's no such thing as debt. If debt was real, then there wouldn't be like hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of it that are completely, you can't repay such a debt. It's a complete scam. Hence the reset. They build it up to the point where they can no longer revoke it, and then they just reset the entire system and start again from scratch. It's all just a scam. But anyway, the point is, revoking this tangent, it is very feasible for people to leave tomorrow. And you go to countries like Kyrgyzstan. I always use it as an example because I like it, but there's many places in the world where you can buy a piece of land for a couple of hundreds. You can buy a house for a couple of thousand, and you can live off that land. You can start growing your own food, your own veg. The cost of living in these places is fucking nothing. And it's really doable. People just need to make the jump. And I would question people and say, people that are hesitant, people that will dispute it. When in life has anything that has been attained easily given you something more than when it's been a difficult task, when you've actually had to put effort in, when you've had to research, recite, do exams, build something, construct something, put effort into an interview? All the things that you're proud of doing have always given you the greatest reward. And that's why people need to make the step, because I promise them there's way more out there, especially when you're lucky enough to have the dollar, the euro, or the GBP. So much waiting for you.
I absolutely agree with that.
Just do it.
Yeah, good things don't come easy, in a nutshell.
So where would you go, James, if you had the option? Well, you do have the option. So where would you go?
I'd go
What's
straight
got
to
to be
other
on the tick
city.
box?
I just want to see different zombies.
Different zombies, yeah. That's
I'd
my
go
way of
to
looking at
Berlin.
it.
No,
Oh my God.
so realistically, I'd consider somewhere, potentially like somewhere Scandinavian. I'd be interested, yeah, maybe like Denmark, maybe rural Germany, South America potentially, but I think South American zombies will be pretty fucking crazy, to be honest. I mean,
Mate,
like,
South America is not my cup of tea. Yeah, 100%.
yeah, like, Mexico, Brazil, fucking Argentina, Colombia. Oh my God. Like, yeah, Venezuela. Yeah. So, it's like when it goes off, I mean, those places will be as lawless as any. Um, Ghana seems interesting. Once again, it's a densely populated place, but when the shit does hit the fan, I mean, I wonder when we're talking that everywhere is going to be turned off. Like, where would you want to be when everything's turned off
That's a
everywhere?
great question. That's a great question. Give me the answer,
And
James.
well, so my answer would be I'd want to be somewhere where the people have probably like maybe for lack of a better term, the purest kind of culture. So I'm
Places where they
thinking.
have the ability to live off grid because that's been the norm for so long.
I mean, okay, so obviously the ultimate example of that would be like the Andaman Islands, but however, strangers get fucking eaten, right? So it wouldn't be an option, but they're people who truly live, off the land, and you want, these people that live in the Amazon, these Amazonian people, okay, yeah, cool. They've obviously, been living off the land since maybe their cities were, overgrown or decimated or whatever, and they've kind of adapted and found a way to live, just off the land in the jungle. And then, there's just so many places, like even in the Mediterranean, like there are lots of places that now, compared to what I live in, or what we live in, or what we've been used to, would be good options. However, what are these places going to look like when the shit does hit the fan? And will they be places that everybody goes to? How many people are thinking how we're thinking? I'd like to think it would be the vast minority, but you just never know. It's like people are sheep. It's like, one person says, oh yeah, go to the country, and then like every Tom, Dick, and Harry's going to the country. And
I think that's
then
actually portrayed in the movie 28 Days Later, the zombie movie, isn't it? Do you remember? Have you seen that movie?
28 days later,
One where he
yes,
wakes
that's the
up in
one
the
set in
hospital.
London. Yep, yep, yep,
Yeah,
set
that's
in,
the exact
yeah.
same thing. So there was like a savior place, a kind of heaven, for lack of a better term, like a safe space apparently that everyone was dreaming about and everyone was sharing. And everyone went there, and I don't think it existed anymore for that reason.
Mm.
Because, like you say, everyone is sheep. It's like a fire sale. You tell everyone there's a fucking Black Friday sale at Walmart, and there's nothing left in Walmart the next morning because
Yeah,
everyone just
exactly. Everyone's
gravitates
queued up
there.
at Walmart before it's open. People are already smacking trolleys over each other's heads before the doors have even opened. Like, yeah, absolutely. So there's going to be like an element of being reactive, thinking on the fly. Um, everyone's got, like a jujitsu term is like, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face because, you think, oh, yeah, I'm going to get them in this lock and that lock. But what if the person just decides to start punching you? Like, then, the jujitsu doesn't necessarily work. So, because you're operating within a certain rule set, we're thinking, okay, well, we're going to go here because this place is like this. But things might change very quickly when you've got the marauders there, and then you've got a whole different set of problems. Yeah, I think closer to the time, I think you'd have to judge the political landscape, and just see maybe what makes sense, like
But closer to the
which
time, when
country.
is that time? Is it not now?
Well, I
We're
mean,
in
the
that
time,
time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So obviously, so our eyes are open, and like we kind of look at, okay, well, which countries, have, certain types of cultures. Which places look good? Okay, those places look good, now. But let's just say, in 3 months' time, like let me put it. I mean, a great example would be like 3 months ago, there was no Israel Hamas conflicts going on. Like,
To be
that
fair, I
was
wouldn't have moved there anyway. I don't think it would
exactly,
have been
yeah.
at the top of the list.
Or if we go back, a year and a half, let's just talk about Ukraine, Russia then, for example. That's another example. It's like, oh no, nobody thought, oh, okay, Ukraine would be this place that, is having like this invasion. It will be a country that's officially, in a war on European soil, that Russia and Ukraine are actually at war, like, like these sorts of things like this recently come in. So like in 3 months, for example, somewhere that seems like a good retreat, like one of the blue zones in Japan, for example, where people have loads of like centurions and centenarians, people that live till their late 90s and hundreds, and there's like almost like no crime. Who knows? Like, in 6 months, I might think to myself, oh yeah, I'll move there next year. But then in 6 months, something completely changes. But yeah, somewhere that has
But the key
good
points, what are the
access
key
to our
points?
agriculture
Yeah,
and
exactly.
good culture itself. So there are places that have, great agriculture, but don't necessarily have a good culture. Like, it might be like a waterborne place in Africa that's really rich in fruits and minerals and foods, but it's very dangerous because, there are other things going on there. Much like Brazil, the weather's great, beautiful women. However, there's lots of poverty, lots of corruption, and these sorts of things to deal with. Similar problems in, Eastern Europe, similar problems in parts of Asia. It's just it's it's complex, but I think the most important, and this is why my first point was about self-defense, because I think when the shit hits the fan, no matter what, violence is going to be a major factor. It's going to be a factor for your safety. It's going to be a factor for your survival and your ability to nullify or even, act out, violence is going to be, yeah, imperative. And this isn't to glamorize it at all. This is just like affect. And there's a reason why, in like cultures in the past, it's like, the rites of passage for most men was to, learn how to maybe sword fight or do some archery, or, whether it's even wrestling, and, all of these things is because, this is the nature of the beast, is that, it's survival of the fittest, another term that you used earlier on. And, it's the strong will survive, and there are deviant characters that you're going to need to defend yourself against, and you're going to need to nullify as well.
Well, actually, I agree with it completely. I think when you
Yeah,
mentioned earlier the fact that in a way every place is going to be filled with zombies, but I guess we look at it like we look at crime when you've got a murderer, a serial killer, and a petty thief. Now they're all criminals, but there's different scales, and perhaps there's different scales of zombies, whether literally or metaphorically. The culture is important, absolutely, because when shit hits the fan, places that are already fucking dangerous and filled with less morality today, by the laws of
mm,
logic. Now I could be wrong, the extent that those people are willing to go to in a time of catastrophe and cataclysm, if they're already chopping people up and eating them and killing them now, can only be
exactly,
much worse. Whereas the people
exactly.
that don't do that are going to be less willing to go to those extents. Um, though I would say at the same time that perhaps culture shouldn't be the absolute priority. The absolute priority should be the practical lay of the land. Now, who knows what the cataclysm, how it will appear, how it will be implanted, how it will be, invoked upon us. Now, I believe that, of course, there have been natural cataclysms in the past, but natural meaning that the cataclysm itself is derived from wind, rain, fire, those kinds of things, a changing
Mm,
in the landscape. But who knows if it's been implemented by human beings or not? It's been
exactly.
invoked by explosions or all kinds of things that the military machine, the beast, is capable of. And consequently, I look to go somewhere that's elevated. I'm not talking about mountain like Everest or K2, somewhere it's snowy, because that's also a negative. Because you want, like you said, the capacity to have yourself, surrounded by arable farmlands, places where you can rejuvenate the soil and produce and sustain your livelihood. And therefore, somewhere super cold like the middle of Siberia or the Nepalese mountains is just not necessarily the best option. But you do want to be elevated, but at the same time, I think you want somewhere that, though culture is important, somewhere that's sparsely populated for the reasons outlined earlier when we talked about, the movement out of the cities at this time, when all the harrowing factors are ongoing and buildings are burning and people are escaping. They're moving out into the countryside and they're going to hit the small towns first. And the further you are away from that, the better it is. And then, of course, the temperature, the climate, like I said just then, you don't want somewhere cold, you want somewhere that can produce. So I think that's a priority for me. I mean, some people might put culture at the top, but at the end of the day, like you said, what's a culture now and what's appealing now? When shit hits the fan, people are going to change, and it's no longer going to be that thing that we tick boxed, say Japan at the start, because who
Mm,
knows what the Japanese are capable of? I mean, they might reinvoke those samurai,
exactly.
choppy choppy starts happening all over again. So yeah, I think there is really a practical way of looking at it, and I think, and it is that outlook that people need to apply. I mean, it goes both ways. Again, it's kind of oxymoronic, but if you look at what you look for in a kind of dystopian scenario, in terms of your escape route, try and apply that to your day to day living. Like, look at things. It sounds really horrible, but I was going to say, with tongue in cheek, look at things from a day to day basis as if the coming catastrophe is imminent, which it kind of is. But do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of that analytical approach, like looking at things, deciphering what's right and wrong, and just. But I really do think everyone should just get in a fucking full Fiesta and just drive, or a Vauxhall Vectra and just drive. I don't know why I picked those two cars, but just drive across
Cheap
into
and
Asia,
cheerful.
cheap and
Yeah,
cheerful, exactly, and just
yeah.
stop when you think that the surrounds look appealing, because we are very lucky, being able to experience the demise of the world at a point when our culture is at the height. So I don't believe in
Mm,
the idea that one nation or culture has been oppressing all other cultures since all time. It just fluctuates based on different ages. They impose benefits for certain people at certain points in history, and then they're at the bottom end of the chain at other points. So now we're certainly at the higher end of the chain, and because we can speak English, and because English is, the international language, and because we have the currencies that other nations don't, it is actually a shame and almost insulting not to actually use those to the best of our abilities, because we have such opportunity to survive and thrive potentially in this coming scenario that we really should be fucking, tuning ourselves in that way, I think. So yeah, I don't know where
Yeah.
to end it. Where we don't want to end it on a depressing note. So I was thinking, James,
Well,
you mentioned Berlin, didn't you?
yes.
So
um,
what were you going to say?
yeah. I mean, look, you can stop off in like, Berlin, maybe live there for a year, party it out for a bit. I mean, look, we've got potentially 10 years of like, enjoying this, relatively dystopia free world. So yeah, there's lots of positive things that can be, done in that time. You can travel to all of these places that may, not be so desirable in, yeah, yeah, when the time comes. um and we would absolutely love to be wrong and these times don't come, but it just would appear that the noose has been tightened, the propaganda's still been pushed, and the signs are there that that they are going to do something. They do want to do something, and they have done things in the past, and there's very strong evidence to show that. So yeah. However, back to the positives, is that there are solutions to these things, and these things, um, can be survived. There are things that you can do to safeguard yourself, and there's still lots of fun to be had. I mean, these kind of truths should be liberating. It shouldn't, like, personally, being
The truth will
clueless
set you
and
free.
absolutely the truth will take you through, like living a life of ignorance. Yeah, I mean, give me the truth all day, every single day. I find it refreshing, and liberating, and and it gives you control of your own destiny if you know what's coming and you're prepared for all outcomes. It's an advantageous position to be, rather than somebody who thinks that everything's fine and dandy, and then your world gets completely turned upside down. You don't know what the hell's going on, because you've, yeah, for lack of a better term, like, deluded yourself. You've told yourself that yeah, everything is fine, everything's definite. You've taken for granted your existence, and your position, and you think that things are going to be comfortable forever. But less than 100 years ago, this very country that's comfortable was in a blitz. So yeah, history
Through
repeats
the words
itself.
of Pete Doherty, "Have a drink of a dance of a play." I keep quoting him, but it's my favourite quote of all time. But
Exactly,
that's really the
exactly.
core and the crux of it.
Yeah, exactly. Just, like, enjoy life. It's like, you don't know, because you're aware of reality, it doesn't mean that you cannot enjoy life, because I can tell you what, me and John have a hell of a lot of fun.
And I was gonna link it in. I was gonna link Berlin into that. But I had a little thought afterwards though that we may. I think it would be good. We've accumulated a fair few interesting stories, viewers. Many of them are filthy, and
Yep.
it would be nice to share a story from time to time. So I was pondering whether we should uh, apply that Berlin story or one of the Berlin stories to this video, just to wrap it off with. But we'd have to be very careful with the wording we use, given that YouTube may find this to be what it is, which is quite inappropriate for certain audiences, though this is obviously always a podcast which has kid friendly ticked off. So you have to be of a certain age to access this material. But maybe we should give people like an idea of. In a way, it's quite interesting because it's interesting from the point of view that there are some very outwardly mad individuals out there, but also
Indeed.
it shows that what people just are able to just do, like, and enjoy themselves, if that turns out to be their enjoyment. So, what should we share that story, James? As it's episode 10, it's an anniversary. It's
yeah, there's oh god, there's a few Berlin
I was
stories.
thinking,
I was thinking about which one. Like,
I think we should go in with the Kit Kat.
Hell.
I know.
It's funny because I literally met a guy from Dusseldorf yesterday, and yeah, he told me that he had been there as well.
So many people have been there. It's disturbing me. So
yeah,
many people.
Yeah, and it was like an American guy. He was like half American, half German. But like he lived in America most of his life. Where's he from? Like Wisconsin or somewhere. Yeah.
What should we save it for next episode? I don't mind. What do you reckon?
I say we save it. Save it. Let's give him a bit of a cliffhanger. That's a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Tune in to the next episode 11. Legs 11.
Legs 11. We promise we will reveal the story then, episode 11. It is worth tuning in for. I could promise you that, and there'll be plenty of stories after that as well. I think it would be good to make it a trend, actually, to add perhaps to the end of each episode, just a little glimmer into the madness of the world. Perhaps a madness that, and perhaps there's stories other people can share with us too, because obviously we're not the holders of all the crazy things that happen. It's just one niche, one aspect perhaps of what God, it just got really echoey in here, of what goes on. And I guess I'd find it interesting. So I'm sure there are some people out there that want to hear the dirty Berlin stories. So yeah, episode 11. Tune in.
It's coming. Mwahaha.
Indeed. Well, unless they disable all global comms between now and then, and we're all fucked, and we're actually, in which case the advice that or not advice, but what we've talked about might actually prove to be advice that might be useful. People might start pondering about, punching zombies in the face and hoarding baked beans in their cupboards. But yeah, until then, I guess we'll leave it at that, eh?
And I think we're at for 45, 50 minutes, maybe.
I have no idea. I haven't even checked.
Yeah.
But yeah, sounds good time. All right. So
thank you once again for listening to us. Hopefully you take something away from it. It's not all doom and gloom. Far from it. There's solutions, and it's better to be in the know than not be in the know. Ignorance is never bliss.
I couldn't have said it better. On that note, we'll catch you guys for the next episode. And yeah, I'll touch base with you later, James, or this week. And yeah, good luck to you all. And remember, a good comment or a good subscribe, as corny as it may sound, it does help. So yeah, appreciate it all. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Au revoir.
Adios.
I've got to work out how to turn this Skype off.